I've somehow been able to forge a Big Ten conversation without making our way to Michigan, but we talk enough Michigan football on Steve Deace's podcast. So for the most poignant takes on Michigan football, go to Michigan Podcast and check out specifically the first segment of that show where Steve will deliver his take on Michigan football. Then he's gracious enough to drag me along for my 2 cents on the Wolverines, but very impressive in 3 touchdowns. And Jim Harbaugh seems like he's loose and feeling good about himself and making jokes in front of the media and rushing for 335 and barely throwing the ball. Army outpassed the Maize and Blue this week.
Mark, it's the best opening 2 games for a Michigan offensive line that I can remember, at least since 2006, at least. And maybe even earlier, because they were throwing the ball a lot earlier in the game in that season. I mean, this is if this is some old school stuff with with a new school look. Everything's operated out of a spread, but a lot of old fashioned. You know what it looks like? It looks a lot like that counterplay and the various looks off of that Oregon, I think, had 3 touchdowns and a long first down off of against Ohio State. Michigan's running a lot of traditional, power Big Ten football out of modern contemporary looks. And the problem that the first 2 teams have had defensively, you throw maybe Western Michigan out as a MAC team that's considered one of the best offenses in the MAC, but it's not a good defense. I would say Washington, this will be one of the 4 or 5 best defenses Michigan will face this season in terms of sheer personnel at the very least. And the problem you have is because they're not running this out of, tight pro style formations, you really, and since they're running this out of the spread check with me system, as much as you'd love to send all your linebackers downhill on the snap, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because they've got you all spread out like that, you kind of can't, They do the dummy hand clap. You show blitz. They look to the sideline. They can just sit there and say, all right, here, just throw the slant behind the linebacker. So that formation forces you to stay somewhat honest. Now, eventually, if Michigan continues to run the ball 50 times, teams are finally just going to say, all right, screw this. I'm going to have to force them. I can't hold up. They've recruited too well. And they have recruited exceedingly well on the offensive line in the last few years, maybe better than anybody in our league. And so eventually teams are going to be like, I can't hold up at the point of attack. So whoever's playing quarterback, Cade McNamara, JJ McCarthy, Mark Rogers, I just can't sit here and let them get 6 yards of play on me on the ground and bleed the clock like we just did against Washington. So eventually, and I could see like that game against Wisconsin in a couple of weeks being the one. Rutgers will probably try this too, but they don't have the offensive firepower that even if it works a few times to keep up. So I could see Wisconsin saying, all right, we're going to just completely sell out here. And if Cade McNamara makes 6 or 7 spot throws against us and beats us, again, we'll applaud you on the way out the field and Godspeed, because we just can't allow Michigan to Wisconsin us, okay, like this. But then that'll be the true test. I will tell you, I think everybody's way overrating the Ronnie Bell injury, and I love the kid. Frankly, Ronnie Bell has missed more blocking on the perimeter, okay? I mean, the amount of handicappers I saw last week basing their pick and Michigan, dissolving because of the Ronnie. The guy has 5 career touchdowns in 27 games, Mark. Okay? 5 career touchdowns in 27 games. He's a nice player. We didn't lose Desmond Howard, Derek Alexander. Hell, we didn't lose Amari Darbo, all right? He's a nice player. But where he was missed the most was blocking outside on those bubble screen passes or those swing passes out there, those quick screen throws to the flanker out there. He's excellent blocking out there. But this is not a guy that's been like some kind of big play machine in his career. They have recruited very well at receiver, not to Ohio State's level, but probably no one in America has. They've probably recruited that position better than anyone else in our league other than Ohio State. So at some point, someone is just going to say, you know what, we just can't afford this, okay? And we're just going to make you do it. And if you throw for 300 yards, Godspeed. And that's what it'll be fascinating to find out what happens when that occurs. But if you are as a Michigan fan, you had a few concerns coming into this year. You wanted to see culture, and you've seen a dramatically different culture. And I go back to what I told you last time I was on, when, J.J. McCarthy threw that touchdown pass, and the first guy that congratulated him off the field was Cade McNamara. You see a lot more winning and playing for each other in Michigan than we've seen the last couple of years so far. Now, they haven't faced, any real adversity yet, so we shall see. In past years, when they didn't face any adversity, we didn't see this kind of energy and enthusiasm the last couple of years either. So check that box. What is this offensive identity? Harbaugh's had like this 4-year magical mystery tour. What are we doing here? All right, we got an offensive identity. Check that box. Is Mike McDonald, can he coordinate a defense? Man, they run a ton of different looks. They play a ton of different guys, and they substitute freely. It doesn't look like a Chinese fire drill out there. Maybe once or twice in the first 2 games, they've had to call timeouts, and that's largely been when a lot of backups have been in, so they're not as well-versed. It looks seamless. It looks professional. Check that box. So, man, I was pessimistic coming into this year. But several of the boxes that you wanted to see checked as a Michigan fan have already been checked. And now the big one is, do they finally have the ability to generate enough big plays? They did against Western, but that was Western. Do they have enough, to generate big plays, both with their outside receivers as well as their running game, if indeed they're up against an Ohio State and it takes 35, 38 points to win? Okay. And that's the question that remains to be answered. But I don't know. Tell me who's on their schedule between now and Ohio State that would force that issue. I mean, if we're going to run the ball for 300-something yards against Washington, then here's what that tells me. Indiana, Maryland, Nebraska, Northwestern, Northern Illinois, Rutgers. That's 6 games right off the top of my head right there. Those teams can't stand up to the point of attack against what we have. They can't do it. All right. So then I would say Michigan State can't either, but that's a rivalry game and it's in East Lansing. So throw that out. Who the hell knows what happens? But you're at 2-0 right now. If you win the 6 games I just mentioned, that's 8. All right. So, and now it comes down to Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin. Ohio State's a completely different animal right now for Michigan. But those 3 games, can Cade McNamara make the 4 and 5 throws that win you those games? Like the 2 or 3 throws that Shea Patterson made in East Lansing in 2018, for example. All right. Can you do that? All right. And if you can, you're looking at a team that can make a New Year's Six bowl. If not, you're looking at probably an 8-14. But you know what? Going into the year, I really thought 5 and 7 and 6 and 6 were possibilities. Now I don't.
And for a team that may be feeling a little bit too good about themselves at 2-0, the tonic, and this may do the trick for incentive this week, is that Rocky Lombardi, Michigan State quarterback who torched them last year, is coming to town with a Northern Illinois uniform on. Yeah,
this is a really young team, and they're playing a lot of young guys. A lot of guys with freshman eligibility, either that are freshmen or red shirts, or I guess we'll call them super freshmen because they, last year didn't count. These are, and so many guys are playing that I'm not so much concerned about the getting high and mighty factor with young, talented teams, because they do tend to be hungry. I always go back to that 2014 Ohio State team. The next year, you all brought everybody back, and they really just never, until the very end of the year when they played us, they never really looked like the team all year long that we thought they should have been, given the amount of pros that Ohio State brought back on that team. It's just human nature to not be as hungry when you've already achieved something, right? So I would be more concerned about that if this ends up being a 9-3, 10-2 Michigan team. And then if that's the case, with the amount of guys we would bring back, we would be a preseason top 10 team next year. And that's when you start, I think, to get concerned about that. And that, if you know the long history of post Bo Schembechler football at Michigan, it's more often than not, when they're rated highly, that what you're talking about becomes an issue. And then seasons like this one that they weren't, that they overachieve. And I think I gave you the stat, the last 9 times Michigan was not ranked in the preseason AP poll, 5 of them, they finished 12 or higher in the final AP poll.
Now, you are the pessimist, but had gone with the boom or bust theory for this year, and we had talked about that several times. I stayed in the safe prediction zone of this is a good football team that's running into a difficult schedule, and there's a certain vibe that's not real good around the program. It equals 7-5 for me. So if they passed that point of convincing you that the boom is on, or do you need to see that maybe against a Wisconsin?
I want to see. I was telling my son the other day, he's a freshman in high school. We have not won in Madison. We've only played there like 5 times since then, but we haven't won a game in Madison since 2001, the year his oldest sister was born. And the last couple times we've gone there, it has been some of the most embarrassing moments in recent Michigan football history, where we just got completely depanted. Our pants just pulled down on national TV. I want to see that game, and not so much does Michigan win. That'd be great. But do we walk out of there not thinking, wow, we need to check our T level? They took our manhood again. We left portions of our scrotum out there on the field again, and up there in Madtown. All right. And now we're all like, reassessing our self-worth as a program after another Wisconsin humiliation. I want to see if they can stand up at the point of attack against them, but then also take a punch in the mouth and get back up off the mat. Show me that, win or lose. And then I'll say, yeah, I think 9-3, 10-2 kind of a team. All right. But I want to see that first. I'll say this. I'm more optimistic that they can do that than I was 2 weeks ago.
Sure. They've given definite reason to think that way.